Tonight we trade the soft warmth of your bed for the cool, dense air of a northern Song Dynasty night. We swap the hum of a quiet house for the profound, watchful silence of a city of over 1 million souls, all holding their breath in the dark. You are no longer a listener tucked under a duvet. You are a Xuanjian, a night watchman on the first circuit of your patrol through the eastern precincts of Bianliang, the capital we now call Kaifeng. The year is 1102 during the reign of Emperor Huizong. The city is the largest, most vibrant and most technologically advanced metropolis on Earth. A symphony of commerce, culture and chaos that, by imperial decree, must fall utterly still for the hours between the third night watch and the fifth morning drum. Your job is to be the conductor of that silence, the solitary ear listening for any note played out of turn. And let's be clear from the start, this is not a romantic stroll. The night is a different city, a creature of shadows and sharp edges, and you are armed with nothing but a wooden baton, a lantern, and an iron token that proves you haven't stolen your uniform. You're a civil servant on the graveyard shift, and one wrong alley, one missed signal, could mean more than just a lost job. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now dim the lights and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The watch house is a bubble of dim, smoky light in a sea of ink. The air inside is thick with the smell of cheap lamp oil, stale tea, and the damp wool of your newly issued black tunic. You received it just an hour ago, along with a hurried briefing from the day patrol captain, a man with a beard like tangled calligraphy and the weary eyes of someone who has seen every possible way a city can misbehave. The tunic is slightly too large and it itches. This, you are learning, is the foundational experience of imperial service. Mildly uncomfortable clothing. You stand at a scarred wooden counter as the night sergeant, a man whose face seems carved from the same weathered oak as his desk, finishes etching your details onto a clay tablet with a fine stylus. He doesn't look up. His movements are economical, perfected over 10,000 nights of bureaucracy. Eastern precincts, he grumbles, his voice like gravel shifting in a pouch. From the drum tower east to the Yangtze Gate Wall, north to the Iron Pagoda Canal, south to the Horse Market Alley. You know the lantern codes. You nod, reciting the rote lesson. Steady light for all clear, swinging for assistance, lantern lowered to the ground for a disturbance requiring backup. He gives a curt, satisfied grunt. This system of lantern signals is a widely accepted historical fact. A primitive but effective network that allowed the city's sparse night force to coordinate across vast distances in an age before radio. Then he slides 2 objects across the counter towards you. The first is your lantern, a metal-framed cube of oiled paper with a steady candle inside. Its light is meager but sovereign. It will be your only sun for the next 6 hours. The second object makes a solid thunk that seems to quiet the very air in the room. It is your shinpai, your signal token. Cast in iron, it's about the size of your palm, heavy as a heart. On one side, it bears the insignia of the Kaifeng prefecture. On the other, a number corresponding to your patrol route and a single stark character. Night. You lose that, the sergeant says, finally meeting your eyes. And we lose you. Comes back with you at the 5th drum, or it doesn't. Understand? The weight of it in your hand is absurd. It's an ID badge, a key, and a tracking device all in one. Historians still argue whether these tokens were primarily for accountability or for posthumous identification. A macabre but practical consideration for a watchman who might meet his end in a dark gutter. You slip the cold iron into the leather pouch at your belt, feeling its pull against your hip. It's the heaviest part of your uniform. The sergeant hands you the final item, a slender, polished baton of hardened jujube wood. For knocking on doors, he says, a flicker of something that might be dry humor in his eyes. Only doors. You take it and the transfer is complete. You are now an extension of the Imperial Night, a slow-moving particle in the dark matter that holds the city together while it sleeps. With a final nod, you turn your back on the island of light and step through the heavy wooden door. The silence outside is not empty, it's a presence. It's the sound of a million people dreaming, arguing in their sleep, snoring, whispering secrets into pillows. It's the creak of a million wooden beams cooling from the day's heat. Somewhere far away, a dog barks once, a solitary punctuation mark. You raise your lantern, and its light pushes back the darkness just enough to reveal the packed earth street ahead. The overhanging eaves of the single-story shop fronts forming a jagged canyon roof against a sky dusted with stars. You take your first official step. The crunch of your straw-soled sandals on the dirt is deafening. You are now the loudest thing in your world. You walk and the watch house glow shrinks behind you, a memory of warmth. The night, in all its immense quiet depth, opens up and swallows you whole. Your slow walk has begun. The watch house lingering scent of oil and authority is stripped away within 20 paces, replaced by a complex, shifting bouquet that tells you exactly where you are, even with your eyes closed. You've entered the tail end of the night market on Marsyong Street, a precinct the day captain dismissed with a wave of his hand as mostly harmless, just loud. In the daylight, this is a narrow, mud-choked lane of fabric dyers and noodle shops. But now, under the gentle, swaying glow of 100 paper lanterns strung like drunken constellations, it has transformed. The silence you carried from the watch house is not broken here, but it is softened. It's padded by the murmur of low voices, the soft hiss of steam, the rhythmic thok-thok of a cleaver on a wooden block. The curfew has technically begun, but its enforcement here is a gentle slope, not a cliff. The vendors are packing up, but they are packing up slowly, savoring the last dregs of commerce and community. You move through this lingering carnival like a ghost, your black tunic making you a part of the shadows between lanterns. The vendors see you, of course. Their eyes flick to your baton, to the official cut of your tunic, and then away, a silent acknowledgement that passes both ways. You see their technically illegal activity, they see you choosing, for the moment, not to see it. It's a transactional piece. You pass a steamed bun seller, the woven bamboo tiers of his cart still emitting a warm, yeasty fog. An old man with hands like knotted roots is carefully transferring his unsold buns into a large lacquered box. One for the road, Watchman, he murmurs, not looking up. Keeps the night chill out. It's less an offer and more a statement of fact, a tiny tax paid for your continued ambivalence. You shake your head slightly, a minute motion, and keep walking. The iron token at your hip feels heavier. The sensory overload is delightful. After the sterile watch house, it's a bath for the senses. Your nose is assaulted first by the pungent, fermented tang of a dozen different pickling brines from a vegetable stall, then by the intoxicating, honeyed sweetness of mizao, a thick malt sugar being drizzled onto a stone slab to cool into candy. A meat pie vendor is banking his clay oven, the last embers glowing like orange eyes in the dark, the ghost of roasted lamb and sesame oil hanging in the air. You listen to the sounds of commerce winding down, the clink of copper coins being counted into a felt pouch, the slap of wet cloths wiping down counters, the sigh of a young apprentice whose work is finally done. Here is your lesser-known historical detail, woven into the very cobbles you walk on, that thok-thok sound you heard earlier. It comes from a late-night yaksik vendor. This sticky, sweet rice cake studded with dates and nuts is a Korean dish, a testament to the cosmopolitan nature of Song Kaifeng. This vendor, or his father, likely came as part of a diplomatic or trade mission and found his niche feeding the city's insatiable, midnight sweet tooth. He's using his cleaver not to chop meat, but to portion the dense, glutinous treat. It's a small, edible piece of cultural exchange happening in a back alley under paper lanterns. You pause by a stall selling lanterns themselves, the proprietor lowering his own wares. He has one in his hands, a beautiful sphere of painted silk with a delicate wooden frame. "For your sweetheart, Watchman," he jokes softly, seeing your gaze. "Guaranteed to burn till dawn." You offer the faintest smile, the first expression your face has made since leaving the compound. It feels strange on your skin. You nod at the lantern, just admiring the craft. He beams, holding it up. 3 layers of Hangzhou silk, stretched over a frame of Sichuan bamboo. The candle bracket is adjustable, see. He demonstrates, and you think of your own clumsy, official issue cube of paper and metal. Yours is a tool. His is a piece of art meant to light up a courtyard for a poetry recital or a lover's rendezvous. For a moment, you're not a watchman in a market. You're a man appreciating something beautiful in the dark. Then you remember the weight at your hip, the baton in your hand. You are the night. You are the curb on this beauty, the end of the party. With a final nod, you step away from the pool of golden light, leaving the vendor to his packing. The lane narrows ahead, the lanterns grow sparser. The warm, fragrant chaos of the night market fades behind you, its sounds growing distant, replaced once more by the deeper, older silence of the sleeping city. You follow your lantern's beam, the world shrinking back to a circle of moving light, walking from a memory of warmth into the anticipation of the cooler, darker streets that await. The last glow of the market's lanterns is a faint, orange bruise on the sky behind you. Before you, the world contracts into a tunnel of profound blackness, broken only by the jittery island of light from your own lantern. The packed earth street gives way to larger, irregular stone slabs, slick with a persistent, cool damp. The smell changes utterly. Gone are the complex layers of food and spice. Here, the air is a single, wet note. The smell of standing water, of river mud, of rotting hemp rope, and beneath it all, the faint, organic scent of grain, not the wholesome smell of a bakery, but the dusty, slightly sweet odor of vast quantities of it, stored and waiting. You've reached the canal wharves of the Eastern Transport Bureau. This is the city's hidden circulatory system. By day, these canals are a riot of noise and motion, with official grain barges, private merchant vessels, and passenger ferries jostling for space, loading and unloading under the watchful eyes of a small army of clerks and tax officials. But now, it is a realm of shadows and whispers. Your lantern light skims across the black, ink-still water, which reflects nothing, absorbing the light hungrily. Moored along the stone embankment are shapes, long, low, and hulking. Grain barges. They are dark, silent, and seemingly deserted. But as you walk slowly along the wharf, your senses, sharpened by the dark, begin to pick up the truth. You hear it first, a soft, rhythmic grunting, the sound of immense effort under strict control. Then a faint, wooden creak, the protest of a plank under careful weight. You stop, holding your lantern a little lower. Across the water, on the deck of a large barge, shadows move. Not the chaotic shadows of wind, but the deliberate, human shapes of men bent double, carrying sacks from the barge's hold across a narrow gangplank to a warehouse door that stands just barely ajar. No lights are lit. This is a Schiefen, a private, off-the-books unloading. The imperial monopoly on grain transport is famously efficient and famously corrupt. Historians still argue whether the nocturnal leakage of grain from official barges was a tolerated pressure valve to supplement underpaid workers, or a systemic flaw that bled the state of crucial revenue. Watching the shadows work in perfect, silent synchronicity, you suspect it is a bit of both, a well-oiled, unofficial part of the official machine. You are supposed to challenge this. Your baton is for knocking on doors, but your authority extends to quaysides. The iron token is proof of it. Yet you stand frozen, not out of fear, but out of a sudden, sobering comprehension. To interrupt this is not to interrupt a crime, it is to interrupt a complex ecosystem. Those shadows are dockworkers who likely paid a bribe for this night shift. The grain is probably destined for a private mill owned by a minor official's cousin. Stopping it would cause a cascade of problems, for you, for the night sergeant who would have to process it, for the stability of this very wharf. The day captain's words echo, your job is the peace. The night's peace. Sometimes peace is quiet. So you do something that is, in its way, more powerful than intervention. You make yourself seen. You raise your lantern slightly, just enough for its light to glint on the metal frame and catch the edge of your black tunic. You stand in plain view on the wharf, a silent, official silhouette. The rhythmic grunting across the water stops dead. The shadows freeze. For 5 long heartbeats, the only sound is the soft lap of water against stone. You can feel their eyes on you, a palpable weight in the dark. Then, slowly, the shadows begin to move again, but faster now, with a new urgency. The work must finish before you complete your circuit and come back this way. You have given them a deadline, not a condemnation. It is a compromise written in light and shadow. You turn and continue your walk, leaving the whispered industry behind. The lesser-known detail here isn't in the history books, it's in the technique. The men used no ropes or pulleys, just their backs and the gangplank. They were practicing banghui transport, a method specific to these canals where narrow access forced manual carrying. That specific, bent double posture was known to ruin a man's spine by 40. But it was the only way to get the sacks from barge to warehouse without the screech of a wheel or the clatter of a cart, the very sounds that would attract actual inspectors. Their silence was their skill, and their tragedy. As you leave the wharf area, the smell of grain and mud begins to fade. The canal water beside you gurgles softly, a reminder that this city is as much water as land. You follow the curve of the path, your lantern beam revealing a stone bridge arching ahead. It's the bridge of 10,000 years, a modest but vital arch over a narrower feeder canal. And on its crown, blotting out the stars, is the stationary, tangled silhouette of a large ox cart. It looks less like a vehicle and more like a beetle that has rolled onto its back. Your piece, it seems, is about to get noisy. The bridge of 10,000 years is misnamed tonight. For the merchant whose cart is currently dying on its apex, it might as well be the bridge of immediate and total ruin. You approach slowly, your lantern revealing the scene in pieces. First, the frantic, wheezing bulk of the ox, its harness twisted, steam puffing from its nostrils in the cool air. Then the cart itself, one of its massive wooden wheels wedged sickeningly in a gap between 2 worn bridge stones, the axle bent at a heartbreaking angle. Finally, the merchant, a man whose round face is sheened with a panic sweat that glistens in your light. He's not dressed for manual labor. His robe is of good dark blue hemp, now smudged with grease and dust. He's alternately pushing at the cart's bed and whispering fierce, pleading curses at the ox, which ignores him with the profound indifference of large beasts everywhere. He sees you the moment your light touches him. His expression cycles through fear, hope, and then a kind of weary resignation. You are authority, and authority in his experience rarely arrives to help without a cost. You stop a few paces away, saying nothing. You let the silence, broken only by the ox's heavy breathing and the distant cry of a waterbird, do the talking. This is your first real test, a small drama staged on a stone bridge under the stars. Your baton feels suddenly very light, very silly. You cannot baton a cartwheel back to health. Honorable Watchman, the merchant blurts, bowing quickly, his hands fluttering. A most unfortunate mishap. A stone shifted, the wheel. It is nothing, I will have it resolved momentarily. He demonstrates by throwing his shoulder against the cart again. It doesn't budge. A ceramic jar inside the cart clinks mournfully. The merchant freezes, his eyes wide. You step closer, peering into the cart's bed. It's laden with identical sealed stoneware jars. You know that shape. Everyone in Kaifeng knows that shape. It's the standard vessel for Jiangyu soy sauce, from the famed Zhengji Alley factories. The curfew bell has sounded. You say, your voice calm, almost conversational. It's the first time you've spoken since leaving the watch house, and the words feel foreign on your tongue. Yes. Yes, of course. He agrees too quickly. I was nearly home. My warehouse is just across the bridge, you see? Just there. He points vaguely into the darkness beyond the bridge. So close. An act of heaven this is. Or poor bridge maintenance. He adds the last part with a flash of attempted bravery, trying to shift the blame to the Imperial Public Works, a department famously as slow-moving as his ox. You walk a slow circle around the cart. The wheel is not just stuck, it's splintered. The axle is a lost cause. This cart is going nowhere until sunrise and the arrival of a wheelwright with tools and a block and tackle. The merchant is technically in violation of at least 3 city ordinances: movement of commercial goods after curfew, obstruction of a public thoroughfare, and causing distress to a livestock animal. The ox does look genuinely miserable. You could fine him. You could commandeer his goods as evidence. You could, at the very least, make him empty his cart right here on the bridge and carry each heavy jar one by one to his alleged warehouse. But you think of the silent grain porters. Peace is quiet. You look at the man's face, now etched with genuine despair. This isn't a smug smuggler. This is a small-scale vendor who overestimated his ox's willingness or his wheel's strength. Those jars represent his capital, his livelihood. Smashing them open to prove they contain soy sauce and not, say, illicit Sichuan peppercorns, would be an act of pure bureaucratic vandalism. Here is the historical fact, cold and unyielding as the bridge stone. The Song Dynasty's Jinshu examination system created a hyperliterate bureaucracy obsessed with rules and precedents. The Kaifeng prefecture maintained volumes of ordinances covering everything from the width of streets to the disposal of night soil. You have the legal right, perhaps the duty, to throw the book at this man. Instead, you lean your baton against the bridge parapet. Your warehouse, you say. Is it truly just there? The one with the red door and the broken hinge. The merchant blinks, then seizes the lifeline. Yes, the very one. The hinge. A constant annoyance. How many jars? You ask, nodding at the cart. 24, he whispers. You sigh, a sound that gets lost in the vast night. You look up and down the canal. No one. You look at the ox, then back at the merchant. Unharness your beast. Tie him to the rail. Then you and I are going to move your constant annoyance a little closer to your warehouse door. 1 jar at a time. And you will be silent as the grave while we do it. The relief that floods his face is almost comical. For the next hour, under the indifferent stars, you cease to be a watchman and become a porter. You carry heavy stoneware jars of soy sauce across the bridge of 10,000 years and stack them neatly by a warehouse door that does, in fact, have a broken red hinge. You don't speak. The only sounds are your grunts, his whispered thanks, and the scrape of pottery on stone. It is back-breaking, deeply undignified work. The lesser-known detail? The specific shape of those jars, with their narrow necks and broad bodies, was designed not just for sealing, but for stacking in river barges without rolling. You are currently benefiting from a triumph of Song logistics engineering, 1 painful 40-pound jar at a time. When the cart is empty, the merchant bows so low you think he might topple into the canal. You simply pick up your baton and lantern, your shoulders aching, and walk on, leaving him to his broken cart and his saved fortune. The bridge is clear. The peace, such as it is, has been preserved. You don't look back. Your shoulders protest with every swing of the lantern, a dull ache that is your permanent souvenir from the bridge of soy sauce. The merchant's frantic gratitude still rings in your ears, a hum that's almost as annoying as the physical reminder. You leave the canal's damp murmur behind, turning into a ward of quieter, wider streets. Here, the buildings are not the open-fronted shops of the market or the functional warehouses of the wharf. These are residential compounds, their faces to the world blank and imposing, high, whitewashed walls of tamped earth, topped with dark roof tiles that stare at the starry sky. No light spills from within, no sound leaks out. This is where the successful merchants, the mid-level officials, the wealthy scholars who haven't quite made the leap to true aristocracy, sleep the sleep of the comfortably secure. Or are supposed to. You're about halfway down a street grandly named Alley of the Virtuous Chrysanthemum when you hear it. At first, it's just a texture in the silence, a vibration so faint you think it's the blood singing in your own ears from the exertion. You stop, holding your breath. There. It's the sound of silk, not the rustle of a single garment, but the soft, collective sigh of many fine robes moving in a confined space. Then, a peal of laughter. It's a woman's laughter, high and clear as a silver bell, instantly stifled into a muffled giggle. It is followed by the deeper, restrained chuckle of a man, and the distinct, musical clink of a porcelain cup meeting a jade ring. You look up at the wall beside you. It's unbroken for 30 feet in either direction, save for a single, heavy gate of lacquered wood, banded with iron. A private banquet, deep into the curfew. This is not the desperate scraping of a soy sauce merchant. This is deliberate, privileged decadence. The city's sumptuary laws and curfew ordinances are for the common people, it seems. Behind these walls, a different set of rules applies. You feel a flash of something hot and bitter. Perhaps it's the memory of your own aching back. You have the right, the duty even, to knock on that gate. Your iron token grants you entry anywhere, anytime, for the purpose of inspecting a disturbance. You raise your baton. The polished wood feels smooth, cold. You imagine the scene that would unfold, your official knock shattering the intimate atmosphere inside, the panic, the scurrying of servants to hide evidence of wine and music, the master of the house appearing at the gate, robe hastily tied, face a mask of indignant authority that would quickly melt into calculation as he assessed your rank and likely price. A bribe would be offered, not crudely, but woven into an offer of hospitality, or concern for your arduous duties. It would be more copper than you make in a month. You could take it. Many would. It's an open secret, a grease that keeps the gears of the night turning. Historians still argue whether the pervasive low-level corruption of the Song bureaucracy was a fatal flaw or a necessary, flexible lubricant that allowed a giant empire to function with a relatively small administrative core. But you don't knock. You lower the baton. It's not virtue that stays your hand, it's a deeper, more cynical understanding. Knocking wouldn't stop the banquet. It would merely pause it, inconvenience it, and potentially make an enemy of someone whose cousin might be your knight sergeant superior. The laughter behind the wall is not a threat to the peace. It is the sound of the peace they enjoy, a peace built on walls and privilege. Your job is to protect the silence outside the wall, not the morality within it. So you do something else. You reach out with your free hand and gently, ever so gently, run your fingertips along the cool, gritty surface of the whitewashed wall as you walk. It's a pointless, tactile act of defiance. You are tracing the outline of their secret, acknowledging it without confronting it. As you pass the gate, the laughter comes again, a little louder this time, fueled by wine and security. You catch a whiff of something exquisite on the air escaping over the wall. The unmistakable, spicy sweet aroma of longshu incense, made from a rare sandalwood and ambergris blend, literally worth its weight in silver. That's your lesser-known detail for this section. The specific scent of extreme wealth and illicit pleasure on the night air, a fragrance so expensive it was sometimes called the emperor's breath. You move past the compound, the sounds fading behind you. The encounter leaves a strange taste in your mouth, not of soy sauce, but of something more metallic, like the token on your belt. You are the knight, but the night has layers, and you are patrolling the bottom one. The realization is neither angry nor sad. It just is, as solid and immovable as the wall you just touched. You walk on, the ache in your shoulders now joined by a lighter, more nebulous weight in your chest. Ahead, at the intersection of 4 major wards, you see the reason for your route. The skeletal, dark timber frame of a fire watchtower, a stark silhouette against the Milky Way. It's time to climb, to see the city from the one place where all its walls mean nothing. The watchtower is a creature of pure function, a 70-foot-tall assertion of municipal anxiety. Its timber frame, lashed together with iron bands and sheer willpower, groans softly in the faint night breeze, a constant woody complaint. The ladder up its side isn't so much a ladder as a vertical succession of notched poles, slippery with dew and the ghosts of 1,000 hurried hands. You hang your lantern from a hook on your belt, the light now jouncing crazily below you, turning your climb into a strobing ascent into darkness. The baton is tucked through your sash. You climb by feel and memory, the rough wood biting into your palms, each upward pull reigniting the protest in your soy sauce-weary shoulders. This is the part of the job no one tells you about, the acrophobic, muscle-burning administrative chore. You have to physically check in. You haul yourself over the final ledge and into the small, square platform at the top. The world opens up. The confines of the street, the oppression of the high walls, all of it falls away. Kaifeng spreads beneath you like a vast, rumpled quilt of darkness, stitched through with the faint, silver threads of canals and dotted with the occasional lonely point of light. Another watchman's lantern, perhaps, or a lamp left burning in a sick room. To the north, you can just make out the deeper black of the city wall, a man-made mountain range. To the south, the inky void where the Bien River flows. The air is cleaner up here, colder, carrying the distant, earthy smell of the fields beyond the walls. You take a deep breath, the first one that hasn't tasted of dust or market spices or canal mud. For a moment, you're not a functionary in an itchy tunic. You're a celestial observer, a silent god looking down on a sleeping world. The tower's occupant brings you back to earth. Old Fong is hunched over a brazier of glowing charcoal, its meager heat doing little against the platform's chill. He's been a fire lookout for 30 years, a fact announced by the deep, leathery wrinkles on his face and the way he moves as if his joints are filled with sand. He doesn't look up as you arrive, just gestures with a chin toward a clay tablet and a stylus on a small bench, the check-in log. You take it, noting the time and your route number with clumsy, cold-stiffened fingers. The tablet is almost full. You're just one signature in a long vertical night. Quiet. Old Fong rasps, not a question but a pronouncement. His eyes, however, are never still. They continuously sweep the dark panorama, a lifetime of training looking for the one thing that doesn't belong. Not light, but the wrong kind of light. The shimmering, dancing, hungry light of flames. He's looking for the city's death. Fire was the apocalyptic terror of Song Kaifeng, a city built of wood, paper, and thatch. The Watchtower network was its early warning system, a widely accepted historical fact born of repeated, horrifying experience. Quiet, you agree, handing back the tablet. You stand beside him, following his gaze. From here, the secret banquet in the walled compound is invisible, swallowed by the general dark. The stuck cart on the bridge is a meaningless speck. You see the city not as a collection of incidents, but as a single slumbering entity. It's peaceful in a terrifyingly fragile way. Old Feng offers you a sip from his flask without a word. It's not wine but hot, bitter tea so strong it makes your jaw tingle. It's the lesser-known detail of his trade. Lookouts drank tea, not wine, for the clarity. Wine was for after the watch if you made it that far. You're about to ask him if he ever saw a major fire when the sound cuts through the night. It comes from the northeast, from the direction of the Temple of the Heavenly Peace. It's not a scream of terror, not a cry for help. It's a shout of pure, unadulterated rage. A deep, male voice bellowing a single incomprehensible word, followed by the sharp wooden crack of something breaking. Then silence again, deeper and more profound than before. Your eyes snap to Old Feng. His have already narrowed, pinpointing the origin. He's no longer a sleepy old man, he's a sprung trap. Domestic, he mutters after a moment, the tension leaching from his shoulders. Or a drunk scholar. Too sharp, too short for a robbery. No follow-up. He takes a slow sip of his tea, his gaze resuming its mechanical sweep. The incident is catalogued and dismissed. For him it's a data point. For you down in the streets it's a destination. That shout is now your business. The peace has been punctured, however briefly, and the hole is yours to mend. Your moment of celestial observation is over. You are a night watchman again, with a direction to walk and a mystery that is, in all likelihood, deeply mundane. You nod your thanks for the tea, turn your back on the breathtaking view, and plant your foot on the top rung of the notched pole, beginning your careful, clattering descent back into the quilt of darkness, toward the sound of someone's very bad night. The geometric order of the city scene from the tower dissolves back into a labyrinth of shadows as your sandals hit the packed earth. That single, furious shout has painted a destination in your mind, a compass point in the northeast. You move toward it with a purpose that feels different from your earlier meandering. This is no longer a patrol, it's an investigation. The streets here are narrower, the buildings humbler, leaning against each other for support like tired old men. This is a ward of rented rooms and examination halls, where aspiring scholars from across the empire cram themselves into tiny kazan, guest houses, to prepare for the triennial Jinsha exams that could catapult them into the scholar-official elite or condemn them to another 3 years of poverty and boiled cabbage. You find him not by sight, but by sound. A soft, rhythmic shuffling, like silk dragging over dust. You round a corner into a dead-end alley, and your lantern light falls on a figure that seems conjured from a ghost story. He is young, painfully thin, dressed only in a white underrobe that glows spectrally in the dark. He is barefoot. His feet are black with street grime. His walking, no, not walking. His processing. With slow, deliberate, sleep-heavy steps, he paces the length of the alley's blank wall, 3 paces forward, a precise turn, 3 paces back. His eyes are wide open, glazed, reflecting your lantern light like still pools. In one hand, he holds a writing brush as if it were a dagger. In the other, a crumpled piece of paper. He is murmuring, a continuous, low stream of classical Chinese, the cadence of memorized Confucian commentary. You have encountered a sleepwalking scholar. The pressure of the exams, the endless repetition, the fear of disappointing an entire village's investment, it does this. It breaks minds in quiet, peculiar ways. The shout from the tower was likely his, a burst of dream fury at an imaginary examiner or a rival candidate, perhaps accompanied by the smashing of a cheap inkstone in his room. Now, the fury has passed, leaving only this somnambulant trance. Scholar, you say, keeping your voice low and even. No response. He completes his turn and starts another 3-pace march toward the wall. You step into his path. He walks into you, his thin frame bumping against yours with a soft thud. He stops, blinking. His eyes focus, not on you, but on a point somewhere over your shoulder. The question concerning the rectification of names, he slurs, is for the daylight. You finish gently, using a line from the analects you half remember from childhood. It's a gamble. His eyes snap to yours, a flicker of confused recognition. The brush trembles in his hand. I am lost, he whispers, the grand diction crumbling into a young man's vulnerable confession. I know, you say. Your room. Which Kajan? It takes a minute of patient, circular questioning, but you piece it together. The hall of distant ambitions, 2 streets over. You guide him by the elbow, his steps clumsy and childlike. He clings to the brush and paper as if they are sacred talismans. The walk is slow. He smells of ink, cheap lamp oil, and the faint, sour scent of chronic anxiety. This is the human cost of the meritocratic miracle, the lesser-known reality behind the Song Dynasty's famous examination system. For every candidate who achieved the flowery grace of success, dozens were broken by it, left with shattered nerves, emptied purses, and sometimes, a habit of reciting Tang Dynasty poetry in their sleep. You find the Kajan. Its main door is bolted, but a side entrance for late-returning scholars is slightly ajar. The room he describes is on the 2nd floor, a cell barely large enough for a pallet and a writing desk. You lead him up the creaking stairs. The corridor is lined with identical doors, behind one of which someone is snoring with the force of a sawmill. You push open his door. The scene inside is a monument to quiet desperation. Scrolls are unfurled everywhere. Sheets of practice calligraphy, covered in frantic, repetitive characters, are piled like autumn leaves. On the floor lies the source of the cracking sound, a shattered inkstone, its dark fragments scattered across the floorboards. In the center of it all is a narrow bed, its blanket tangled and thrown aside. He sees the mess and a shudder of waking humiliation goes through him. He is surfacing. I apologize, Honorable Watchman. I was studying. You were sleeping, you correct, not unkindly. The night is for sleep. Even for scholars. You steer him to the bed and he sits heavily, the fight gone out of him. You pick up a discarded outer robe from the floor and hand it to him. Put this on. The night is cold. As he fumbles with the robe, you look at the crumpled paper still in his hand. Smoothing it out, you see it's not an essay, but a crude map he's drawn of the examination hall, with little X marks where he hopes to sit for good luck. Historians still argue whether the extreme psychological stress of the exams was a deliberate feature to test mental fortitude, or an unintended, tragic byproduct of a system that worked too well in creating ambition. Looking at this young man's pale, exhausted face, you have your own answer. You leave him sitting on the edge of his bed, staring at his broken inkstone. You close the door softly behind you. The shout has been accounted for. The peace, in its own strange way, has been restored. As you descend the stairs back into the alley, you realize you never got his name. It doesn't matter. In 3 days, 10,000 young men just like him will flood the examination grounds. Most will fail. He is just one of many ghosts this city makes before they've even died. You walk on, the image of his wide, vacant eyes lingering in the dark behind your own. The encounter with the sleepwalking scholar leaves a peculiar silence in its wake, a silence that feels intellectual, haunted by ghost essays and fractured poetry. You leave the cramped residential alleys, seeking a clearer, more physical space. You find it in the street of the printers and engravers. By day, this is a cacophony of chisels on woodblock, the slap of ink, and the rhythmic thump of presses, a street dedicated to the most revolutionary technology of the age, movable type. By Xing's invention, decades prior, hangs in the air here like the smell of ozone after a lightning strike. But now, the storefronts are shuttered, the carved signboards hanging still. The only sound is the scuttle of a rat in the gutter and the whisper of a stray page of discarded text caught in a faint eddy of wind. You walk slowly, your lantern light gliding over the locked doors of shops with names like Forest of Fragrant Characters and Hall of 10,000 Volumes. You're about halfway down its length when you hear it, not from a shop, but from a narrow service alley that snakes behind them. A rhythmic, solid thump, thump, thump. It's not the erratic sound of construction or violence. It's mechanical, persistent, a heartbeat with a purpose. It's the sound of a printing press, operating in the dead of night. This is not just a curfew violation, it's a statement. The press is the pulse of ideas, and this pulse is beating in the hours reserved for silence. You slip into the alley, a slit of darkness between high walls. The thump grows louder, more distinct. You see a sliver of light, the barest amber glow, seeping from under a heavy wooden door at the alley's end. You approach silently, not as an enforcer now, but as a curious shadow. You don't raise your baton. You simply listen. Through the gaps in the warped door planks, you can see slivers of the scene inside. It's a small, cramped workshop. A single oil lamp hangs over a simple, wood-framed press. A man, his arms and leather apron smeared with dark ink, is working the lever with a steady, practiced motion. Thump. He lifts the lever, peels back a sheet of paper, revealing the sharp, black characters. He hangs the page on a drying line with a dozen others. Thump. Another page. There's a feverish intensity to his work, but also a deep, focused calm. He's not just printing, he's in communion with the machine. What is he printing? A band commentary on the classics? A seditious political pamphlet criticizing the reform policies of Chief Counselor Cai Jing? A popular, and therefore vaguely disreputable, collection of romantic Ci poetry? Or perhaps just a rushed order of Buddhist sutras for a temple's morning ceremony? You can't tell. The content is irrelevant to the act. The act itself is the rebellion. The government maintained a sometimes watchful eye on printers, but controlling the flow of information in a city with hundreds of presses was, as one historian put it, like trying to bail out the Bien River with a teacup. This man in the night is a testament to that uncontrollable flow. This is your lesser-known historical detail, inked into the very night. The press he's using likely employs ceramic type, not metal. Bai Xing's original invention used clay, and while metal type existed, the cheaper, more accessible ceramic type, fired clay characters set in a resin frame, was the workhorse of the smaller, often clandestine, printing operations. That thump is the sound of fragile, baked earth pressing ink onto paper, a paradox of durability and brittleness that perfectly mirrors the ideas it transmits. You stand there for a long time, watching the rhythm, listening to the press's wooden sigh and the worker's soft grunt of effort. You think of the sleepwalking scholar, memoizing approved texts to please the state. Here, in this alley, is the other side of the coin, a man physically manifesting words, any words, into the world while the state sleeps. One is consumed by the canon, the other is reproducing it, or subverting it, one thump at a time. Historians still argue whether the Song Dynasty's flourishing of print culture ultimately strengthened the state by disseminating orthodox ideology, or weakened it by making heterodox ideas equally easy to spread. In this alley, the answer is simply yes. You don't interrupt. You don't knock. To stop this press would be to stop a force of nature as fundamental as the canal current. You are just the night, and the night contains multitudes, including this secret, inky heartbeat. You finally step back, leaving the printer to his labors. The thump, thump, thump fades behind you, absorbed back into the general silence of the street. As you emerge from the alley, a new smell begins to gently overtake the lingering scent of ink and paper, a dry, herbal, profoundly complex aroma, as if 100 gardens and 100 apothecary jars have been opened to the stars. You've reached the edge of the medicine quarter. The transition is as clear as a line drawn in scented dust. One moment you're in the world of ink and intellect. The next you are immersed in a world of raw physical essence. The medicine quarter doesn't sleep so much as it breathes deeply, exhaling the accumulated exhalations of 10,000 roots, barks, flowers, fungi, minerals, and things you probably don't want to identify. The air is thick, particulate. It smells of bitter angelica, sour hawthorn, cloyingly sweet licorice root, camphor's clean punch, and beneath it all the earthy, fungal scent of reishi mushrooms drying on mats. Your lantern light seems to struggle here, dulled by the density of aromas. The shops are larger here, with deep open fronts now shielded by rolling bamboo gates. Behind the gates, you can sense the cavernous interiors, shelves rising into darkness, holding porcelain jars as big as your torso, each labeled with a single cryptic character: Huang yellow, Xen heart, Feng wind. This is where the physicians of Kaifeng, the best in the world, source their materials. The famous treatise on cold damage disorders by Zhang Zhongjing isn't just a theory on these streets. It's a shopping list. You're walking through a library of cures and poisons, a fact that makes your step unconsciously lighter. You stick to the center of the wide street. The silence here feels different. Not empty but pregnant, as if the very herbs are listening. Then you see the light. Not the steady glow of a watchman's lantern, but the frantic bobbing flame of a small oil lamp, coming from the recessed doorway of a shop called 10,000 Remedies Harmony. As you approach, you see a boy no more than 13 kneeling on the stones. He's an apprentice, his simple tunic stained with mysterious brown and yellow smudges. He's frantically grinding something in a small stone mortar, the crush 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 of the pestle loud in the aromatic silence. His face is pale, etched with a fear that has nothing to do with you. He looks up as your light merges with his. His eyes are wide with panic, then confusion, then a desperate hope. "Honorable Watchman, please do not report us. My master is asleep, and a runner came from the Li family. Their newborn is gripped by the wind evil, crying without cease. The formula requires tiger bone powder ground at the hour of the ox to be effective. It must be now." The words tumble out in a whispered torrent. He holds up the mortar. Inside is a yellowish, granular substance. You peer at it. You're no physician, but you've walked this quarter before on day patrol. That doesn't look like tiger bone. It looks like ox bone, meticulously charred and powdered to pass inspection. The real thing is astronomically expensive, the domain of imperial physicians and maybe the very richest ministers. A shop like this would almost certainly stock a substitute. Here is your widely accepted historical fact: ground as fine as the powder in the mortar. Song Dynasty pharmacy was incredibly advanced, with standardized formulas, state-run dispensaries, and a sophisticated understanding of herbal pharmacology. It was also rife with substitution and fraud. The Materia Medica texts warned constantly of counterfeit ingredients. You look from the boy's terrified face to the dubious powder. The child is sick. The family is desperate. The master is asleep. The apprentice is trying to save a life, or at least offer hope with the tools he has. Your duty is clear. The use of counterfeit medicine is a crime. You could confiscate the mortar, wake the master, and levy a fine that would cripple this shop for months. But you think of the sleepwalking scholar, broken by pressure. This boy is under a different, more immediate pressure: the weight of a life or the fear of his master's wrath. The peace you are sworn to keep isn't just the absence of noise. It's the presence of order. Sometimes order is mercy. You glance up and down the street. It is utterly deserted. "Is the Li family near?" you ask, your voice low. 2 streets east by the dyer's vats, the boy whispers. Then finish your grinding, you say, turning your lantern away to shine down the empty street, giving him a pool of shadow to work in. And next time tell your master to keep his real tiger bone in a locked chest, not a jar anyone can see. The crushing sound resumes, faster now, tinged with relief. You stand there for a minute, a silent sentinel while a teenage apprentice commits a minor act of medicinal fraud to comfort a frightened family. The lesser-known detail is the belief itself. That tiger bone, a symbol of fierce strength, had to be prepared during the hour of the ox, 1 to 3 a.m., to properly transfer its potent yang energy to combat the wind evil, a catch-all term for infant convulsions or fevers. The ritual of the timing was as important as the substance, if not more so. The boy wasn't just making medicine. He was performing a ceremony of hope. The grinding stops. You hear the powder being poured into a small silk pouch. The boy scrambles to his feet, bowing deeply. Thank you, Honorable Watchman. May your night be peaceful. And the child, you reply, not looking back. You walk on, leaving him to his urgent, illicit delivery. The complex aromas of the quarter seem to close behind you, a scented curtain drawn on the small drama. Your path now angles toward the city's heart, where a different kind of machine marks the passage of the night, not with scent, but with sound, water, and the precise, unfathomable motion of the stars. The herbal fog of the medicine quarter reluctantly releases you, the sense thinning into the general night coolness of wider boulevards. You are headed for the city's navel, its temporal and spiritual core, the drum tower, and, beside it, the reason you've timed this leg of your patrol. It's almost the hour of the rat, midnight by our reckoning, and in Song Kaifeng, midnight is not a silent concept. It is a spectacle of engineering. You hear it before you see it, a low, liquid rumble, the sound of contained power, of water channeled and harnessed. It's the hydraulic drive of the astronomical clock tower, built by the genius Song over 2 decades ago. You round a final corner, and there it stands, a pagoda-shaped silhouette against the stars, but a pagoda that hums with the heartbeat of the empire. No lights shine from it. It performs its majesty for an audience of ghosts and night watchmen. You stop in the vast, empty square before it, a speck of moving light facing a monument of still, intelligent darkness. This is the pinnacle of Song mechanical and cosmological achievement, a widely accepted fact that never fails to humble. The tower is over 30 feet tall, a complex orrery driven by a constant torque water wheel escapement, a concept the Europeans wouldn't figure out for another 200 years. Inside its bronze intestines, armillary spheres model the heavens, and automated mannequins wait to announce the hours. You've seen it in daylight, of course, a tourist marvel for visiting provincial officials. But to see it now, in the depth of night, is to witness it in its pure state. It is not a show for humans. It is a machine communing with the universe, tracking the celestial bodies whether anyone is watching or not. The hum vibrates up through the soles of your sandals. You wait. And then it begins. A deep, resonant clunk from within the tower's stone base, the sound of a massive wooden gear engaging. This is followed by a melodic, automated clang from a bronze bell, a single, pure note that hangs in the air, marking the hour. But the bell is just the announcement. Now, on the front-facing platform of the tower, a small wooden door springs open. Out comes a procession of Zichen, time-announcing mannequins. Your lantern light catches the first one, a carved and painted figure in a red scholar's robe, holding a tablet. It jerks forward on its hidden track with a sound of smooth wood on wood, presents its tablet, which you know says midnight in seal script, bows mechanically, and retreats. It is followed by another, a figure striking a drum, then another with a gong. The sequence is precise, cold, and utterly mesmerizing. You are alone in the square with this performance. There is no cheering crowd, no impressed ambassador. Just you, the watchman, and the machine faithfully enacting the empire's claim to understand and regulate time itself. It is both awe-inspiring and deeply lonely. Historians still argue whether Suzong's clock was primarily a scientific instrument, a political symbol of imperial control over the cosmic order, or an incredibly expensive toy. Watching the little wooden men bow to an empty square, you feel it is all three. Here lies the lesser-known, slightly amusing detail: the maintenance. The clock was so complex that it required a dedicated staff of clockwinders, oilers, and adjusters who lived in a permanent state of low-grade panic. The water had to be kept scrupulously clean to prevent silt from clogging the works. In winter, it had to be heated gently to prevent freezing. The story goes that one hapless technician, tasked with oiling the central escapement, dropped his wrench into the gear train. The resulting cacophony of shearing bronze was said to have sounded like a dragon in agony and silenced the clock for a week, throwing the court's entire schedule into chaos. You look at the serene, humming tower and imagine the sheer human anxiety that keeps it ticking. The last mannequin retreats, its little door snapping shut. The bell's echo fades. The deep hum continues, the water flowing, the gears turning, plotting the paths of planets unseen. Your moment of audience is over. The machine has acknowledged the hour and now returns to its private, eternal calculations. You feel the weight of your own, far simpler timekeeping device, the iron token in your pouch. Your night is half over. You turn your back on the clock tower, its rhythmic rumble slowly fading as you walk north, towards the temple district. The silence that follows feels earned, respectful. You've just attended the world's most precise, most solemn midnight ceremony, and you didn't even have to buy a ticket. The profound engineered order of the clock tower recedes behind you, its hum replaced by the soft, sandy whisper of your own footsteps. You head northeast, skirting the sleeping mansions of high officials, aiming for the Eastern Temple District. Here, the city's spirituality is stacked in pagodas and tucked into quiet courtyards. The air smells of old incense and dust. It's meant to be one of the calmer stretches of your patrol, a place for contemplation rather than intervention. So the first hint of chaos is a shock to your system. It's not the smell of smoke, thank all the Buddhas and Taoist immortals. It's the sound of organized shouting. Then the slosh thump of water hitting wood. Then the rapid, slapping footfalls of many people moving with urgent purpose. You break into a jog, rounding the corner of the Temple of the Cloud-Scraping Pagoda, your lantern beam jolting wildly. The scene before you is both terrifying and instantly comprehensible. A line of maybe 20 people stretches from the temple's central well to the open doors of a nearby sutra printing house. Buckets of water are being passed hand to hand along the line with grim efficiency, from the well to the building. At the head of the line, a monk in a gray robe, his bald head gleaming with sweat in the light of several hastily lit lanterns, is throwing the water through the printing house door. There's no visible flame, no roaring heat, just this relentless rhythmic transfer of water. Your heart, which had leapt into your throat, settles back into a hard, quick rhythm. This isn't a fire. This is a fire drill. Or rather a fire response. You step closer, your official presence noted by the people at the end of the bucket line, who glance at you with wide eyes but don't break rhythm. You reach the monk at the front. "What burns?" you demand, your voice cutting through the coordinated grunts and sloshes. The monk doesn't stop. He heaves another bucket, its contents disappearing into the dark doorway with a splash. "Nothing, Watchman," he gasps. "Yet, the cat, the warning, we are preventing." It takes another 30 seconds of chaotic explanation, gathered in shouted fragments from the monk and a panting novice, to piece it together. The temple's venerable Mauser, an ancient tortoise-shell feline, had been asleep on a pile of discarded paper scraps in the printing house. A tipped-over oil lamp, strictly forbidden of course, had leaked, its smell startling the cat. The cat had yowled, a specific piercing yowl the monks interpreted as a fire-warning cry. A common folk belief. Rather than check first, the abbot had ordered the full fire response protocol enacted immediately. Better to soak a scripture haul than to lose it, the novice explains fervently. So here they are, the entire nighttime complement of the temple, plus a few neighbors roused from sleep, conducting a flawless, spontaneous bucket brigade to extinguish a phantom fire sparked by a startled cat. The lesser-known detail at work is the sheer community efficiency. Kaifeng had organized ward-based firefighting teams called Fenghuojun, but this was a hyperlocal ad hoc version. They were demonstrating in real time the muscle memory of a city eternally afraid of flames. The bucket chain was perfect, the well crank turning smoothly. It was in its way beautiful. You step past the monk and peer into the printing house. Your lantern light reveals a soaked disaster. Floating in several inches of water are thousands of sheets of newly printed sutras, the ink bleeding into beautiful, meaningless Rorschach blots. Wood blocks are submerged, and on a high, dry shelf, glaring down at the inundation with supreme indifference, sits the tortoise-shell cat, meticulously licking a paw. You suppress a completely inappropriate laugh. Comes out as a cough. You turn back to the monk. "The fire is out," you announce loud enough for the bucket line to hear. "The threat is contained. You may stand down." The relief is palpable. The bucket line slows, then stops. People slump against walls, gasping, staring at the minor flood they've created. The monk sags, his shoulders dropping. He looks at the water pouring out the door, then at the cat, then at you. The reality of the situation, the ruined scriptures, the night of mopping up ahead, dawns on him. "The Buddha tests us in strange ways," he murmurs, not sounding entirely convinced. Historians still argue whether the famed Song firefighting systems were primarily proactive, through strict building codes, or reactive through organized brigades. Tonight you've witnessed a third unrecorded category, the preemptive, panic-driven, and catastrophically successful overreaction. You help for a while, not with the buckets, but by using your baton to clear a drainage channel in the gutter so the floodwaters can begin to recede. As you work, you realize no one asked for your authority. They just saw your tunic and accepted your help. It's a different kind of peacekeeping. By the time you slip away, the monks are already wringing out sodden pages, their panic replaced by a kind of weary camaraderie. The cat has vanished, its duty done. You walk on, the cuffs of your trousers damp, carrying the smell of wet paper and monastic sweat with you, heading for the great dark spine of the northern wall. The damp chill from the temple district's minor flood seeps through your straw sandals, a cold reminder of the world's absurdity. You leave the realm of soggy scripture and communal panic behind, the streets gradually tilting upward on a long, gentle slope. The buildings here are lower, more functional, warehouses for the goods that come overland from the north, workshops for cartwrights and saddlemakers. The air loses its complex urban perfume, becoming simpler, colder, carrying a dusty, mineral scent. You are approaching the base of Kaifeng's northern wall. It isn't a wall so much as a man-made cliff, a sudden, vertical geography of tamped earth and brick that blocks out the entire northern sky. From down here, it feels less like a fortification and more like a continent's edge. Your lantern light can't hope to touch its top. It just illuminates the rough, pockmarked surface of its base, scarred by time and weather. This is the shield against the Khitans, the Jurchens, the wind from the steppes, and all the other restless energies of the north. It is the end of the civilized world, according to the city behind you. You follow a patrol road that runs parallel to the wall's base, a ribbon of packed dirt between the immense rampart and a ditch now dry and choked with weeds. Your footsteps echo dully here, trapped between the earthworks and the silent warehouses. The sense of scale is humbling, designed to make an individual feel like an insect. And then you hear the song. It's a thin, reedy sound, barely more than a hum carried on the night breeze. A human sound. You look up, squinting into the darkness. About 50 paces ahead, a wooden ladder is lashed to the wall, leading up to a battlement. At the top, you can just make out the silhouette of a helmeted head, a suggestion of a spear against the stars. The song comes from there. It's a folk tune from the far south, a wistful, winding melody about the green rivers and misty hills of Lingnan. The soldier on guard is singing, very softly, to himself. It's not a martial song. It's a homesick song. You stop beneath the battlement, a respectful distance from the ladder. You don't announce yourself. You just stand in the shadow of the wall, listening. The soldier up there isn't performing, he's remembering. His voice cracks on a high note, and he lets the melody trail off into a sigh that is swallowed by the vastness. For a minute, there's only the wind whispering over the parapet. Then, a voice floats down, quiet and conversational, as if he'd known you were there all along. Cold tonight. You look up. The silhouette is looking down, though you're just a pool of lantern light to him. Colder up there, you reply, your own voice barely raised. A grunt of agreement. Wind comes straight from Yangjing. Doesn't stop. A pause. Anything happening down in the city? A cat caused a flood in a printing house, you say, the truth sounding ridiculous. A low chuckle drifts down. Better than the last news from up here. Last week, a supply cart lost a wheel and spilled 100 pounds of dried lentils into the ditch. We've been finding them in our boots for days. He says it with the dry humor of someone who measures excitement in legume-related incidents. This is the reality of the Great Wall of Kaifeng. For all its imposing grandeur, its daily life was one of profound boredom, minor irritations, and a loneliness so deep it could only be expressed in a whispered song from another world. The soldier wasn't watching for invaders. He was watching the stars, thinking of home, counting the hours until his relief. The widely accepted historical fact is that Song military policy often emphasized defense and paid border troops regularly, which was revolutionary. The lesser-known detail is what they did with that time and pay. They got bored, they sang, they lost lentils, and they missed home. Historians still argue whether the Song's defensive, wall-centric military strategy was a prudent adaptation to losing the northern horse pastures, or a failure of nerve that cultivated a siege mentality. Up on that wall, for this soldier, strategy is irrelevant. There is only the cold, the wind, the lentils in his boot, and the memory of a green river. Stay warm, you offer, because it's the only thing you can think to say. You too, Watchman, the silhouette replies. Watch out for those cats. You continue your walk along the base of the wall. You don't hear the song resume. Perhaps your presence, a fellow creature of the night shift, was interruption enough. The wall stretches on, an endless, dark presence on your left. After another quarter hour, you find a narrow postern gate, a small, heavily fortified door used for patrols. It's your turn to head back into the city's interior, to leave the frontier edge for the river's edge. You glance back once at the towering rampart, now silent. You and the soldier are mirrors. He guards the line between the empire and the wilderness. You guard the line between the city's day and its night. Both of you are alone with the wind, listening to the silence, waiting for dawn. You push open the small, stiff door and step through, leaving the wall and its lonely guardian to their vigil. The solid, enclosing darkness of the wall's shadow gives way to a more open, fluid blackness. The mineral scent of earthworks is washed away by a new smell, damp, organic, vast. It's the smell of moving water on a grand scale, of wet stone, of fish and mud and the open sky. You've reached the Bien River, the liquid lifeline that made Kaifeng the capital. By day, its surface is a chaos of junks, ferries, and barges so dense you could almost walk across. Now, it is a wide, black ribbon of silence, flowing with a low, powerful murmur that is the city's true, untroubled breath. You walk along a stone embankment, your lantern light skittering over the lapping water. This is not the orderly canal of the grain wharves. This is nature, barely tethered. And along its edge, nestled between the stones of the embankment and the darkness, is a fringe city within the city. Makeshift shelters of reed matting, salvaged planks, and torn sailcloth huddled together like mushrooms after a rain. This is the home of the Liomine, the floating people. The porters who couldn't afford a room, the refugees from a flood upriver, the failed scholars who gave up everything but their pride. The city's forgotten, clinging to its wet hem. You move slowly here. This is not a place for the brisk authority of the baton. Your presence is known immediately. 100 eyes catch the glint of your lantern, though you see none of them. You are not resented here, not exactly. You are a fact, like the river or the cold. You are the thin, black line between their precarious world and the ordered one that expelled them. You patrol this line not to enforce, but to witness. You're about halfway along the encampment when a voice, dry as old paper, speaks from the shadows beside a tilted mat roof. Watchman. You walk a long night. You turn your lantern. An old woman sits on a rolled mat, a threadbare blanket around her shoulders. Her face is a map of deep lines, but her eyes are clear, reflecting your light. A tiny clay stove, no bigger than a teacup, glows with a single piece of charcoal between her feet. A battered tin pot steams gently atop it. The night walks me, you reply, the words coming out before you think. She gives a slow, acknowledging nod, as if you've passed a test. She gestures to a spot on the stone beside her. Not an invitation, just a presentation of fact. You hesitate, then sit, setting your lantern down. The warmth from her tiny stove is a shocking, precious thing in the riverside chill. Without a word, she takes a cracked ceramic cup, rinses it with a splash of hot water from the pot, and fills it. She hands it to you. It's just hot water. But in this context, it is a profound offering. It is cleanliness, warmth, hospitality distilled. You accept it, wrapping your cold hands around the cup. The heat seeps into your bones. You both sit in silence, listening to the river. The water is high for spring, she says after a while, gazing at the invisible current. The snows must have been heavy in the western hills. It will be a difficult flood season. She says it not with worry, but with the calm certainty of someone who has seen 60 flood seasons come and go, from this very spot. She is a living almanac, a repository of practical knowledge no official history will ever record. This is your lesser-known detail, the profound, predictive understanding of the river people, who read the water's height, color, and speed better than any imperial hydrologist with his measuring poles. Their lives depend on it. You sip the hot water. It has no taste, and yet it is the most flavorful thing you've consumed all night. You should be in a charitable hostel, you say, the official in you speaking without conviction. She snorts, a soft, dusty sound. Charity has rules. And walls. The river has only one rule, flow. I prefer the river. Historians still argue whether the Song state's extensive welfare systems, orphanages, old age homes, public pharmacies, were a genuine Confucian benevolence or a tool for social control, keeping the desperate just comfortable enough not to rebel. Sitting with this woman, who has chosen the freedom of the riverbank over the constrained charity of a state hostel, you see the limits of that debate. For some, autonomy, even desperate autonomy, trumps security. You finish the water and hand back the cup. Thank you. She takes it, her knotted fingers brushing yours. The night is long, but it ends, she says. Even the longest river reaches the sea. It's a blessing, or perhaps just an observation. You rise, picking up your lantern. You reach into your pouch, not for the iron token, but for the few small copper coins that are your own. You place them quietly on the stone by her stove. Not payment for the water. An offering to the stove, to the river, to her vigil. She doesn't look at them, just gives another slow nod. You walk on, the cup's warmth still cradled in your palms, the river's murmur now sounding like a promise. The ragged edge of the city continues for a while, then finally falls behind. The embankment curves, and the shelters disappear. You are alone with the river again, but you feel less alone than you did on the wall. The deepest cold of the night is settling in, the hour when even ghosts sleep. They call it the tiger hour, when the last of the day's warmth has fled and the new day's light is still a foreign rumor. The river's consoling murmur fades as you turn inward, leaving the fluid frontier for the city's rigid grid. The warmth from the old woman's cup is a memory in your palms, a tiny ember of humanity you clutch against the creeping chill. This is the Een hour, the time of the tiger, between 3 and 5 a.m. The night has shed its layers of incidental sound. The last drunkard has stumbled home, the final illicit press has fallen silent, the secret banquet has exhausted its wine or its intrigue. What remains is a cold so profound it feels like a substance, a pure crystalline silence that has weight and texture. Your lantern light seems weaker, as if the darkness is actively absorbing it. This is the hour when the world is at its most honest and its most frail. You walk through a market square for daytime tinkers, the empty stalls skeletal in the gloom. A single tattered banner flaps with a sound like a lethargic ghost trying to clap. Your breath plumes in the air, a transient white ghost of its own. This is when the mind plays tricks. The shadows between stalls look denser, purposeful. A pile of discarded baskets becomes a hunched, waiting form until you are right upon it. This is the time for night watchmen's tales, for stories of fox spirits and hungry ghosts who walk in the absolute quiet, because only then can they be heard. You grip your baton a little tighter, but it feels like a child's toy against the existential cold. And then it comes, a sound that shatters the fragile crystal of the hour. Here. A rooster's crow. It's defiant, ragged, and utterly catastrophically wrong. It comes from a nearby residential lane, a place where some ambitious household keeps chickens for eggs. But this bird is broken, its internal clock shattered by disease, dim light, or pure avian contrariness. This is the false dawn, the betrayal. In a city that runs on the official time of water clocks and drum towers, this single premature bird is an act of anarchic rebellion. It is a lie told to the sleeping world. You hear it, and you know every other watchman on patrol hears it. You know that in 100 bedrooms, sleepers stir uneasily, their dreams infected by the suggestion of morning. You know that in the walled compound of the illicit banquetiers, a servant might panic and start lighting fires for breakfast. This one stupid bird has the power to fray the careful order of the approaching shift change. Historians still argue whether the strict drum and bell enforced timekeeping of Song cities was a marvel of social coordination or an instrument of oppressive control. Right now, facing this avian insurrection, you are firmly in the latter camp. You want to find that rooster and have a very serious talk with it about civic responsibility. You follow the sound, your earlier spectral fears replaced by pure, focused annoyance. The crowing leads you to a small walled home with a thatched roof. The bird is perched on the wall, a proud, puffed-up silhouette against the still deeply dark sky. Prayer. It announces again, pleased with itself. You stand there, a representative of the imperial night, facing a 2-pound bundle of feathers in poor judgment. You could wake the owner. You could issue a citation for disturbance of the nocturnal peace, if such a thing exists. But as you watch the bird, you realize the deeper truth. The rooster isn't wrong because it's early. The rooster is early because it, like you, is trapped in the endless cycle of waiting for a dawn that never arrives on time. It's just worse at telling time than Susong's clock. The lesser-known detail here is biological. Domestic fowl can crow at any hour, triggered by light, noise, or internal disorder. They are terrible timekeepers, a fact every peasant knew and every city dweller cursed. Your anger evaporates, leaving behind a weary kinship. You are both creatures of the threshold, announcing a transition that isn't quite ready to happen. You pick up a small pebble from the street and toss it. Not to hit the bird, but to land near its feet on the wall. The rooster startles, flutters down into its unseen yard and falls silent. Problem solved in the most low-tech, undignified way possible. The crystalline silence resettles, purer now for having been broken. You stand for a moment in the restored quiet. The false dawn has been quelled, but the act has stirred something. You look east. Is the blackness there just a fraction less absolute? Is it your imagination, or is the serrated edge of the rooftops beginning to separate itself from the sky, not with light, but with a slight lessening of the dark? The tiger hour is waning. The deepest cold is still upon you, but it is a cold that has reached its peak and now, imperceptibly, begins to contemplate its own retreat. Your walk is nearing its end. The city is still asleep, but its sleep is lighter now, dreaming of the coming drum, not the deep, formless dreams of midnight. You turn your steps back toward the watch house, the iron token in your pouch feeling like a spent talisman, its work almost done. The walk back is a reverse haunting, a retracing of steps through a city that is no longer quite the same. The darkness is no longer a totality, it is a veil, wearing thin in patches. The black has softened to charcoal, and the charcoal is beginning to hint at gray. You don't need your lantern as much. You can see the bulk of buildings, the pale ribbon of the street. You blow out the candle, the sudden absence of its jittery glow a relief to your eyes. The world reveals itself in monochrome, quiet and waiting. You pass the alley of the printers. No thump echoes now. You cross the bridge of 10,000 years. It is empty, the ghost of the soy sauce cart long vanished, though you imagine you can still see a scuff on the stone where the wheel gave up. The high white wall of the banquet compound is just a wall now, blank and silent, its secret laughter evaporated with the night's wine. The medicine quarter's aromas are dormant, waiting for the first shutters to roll up. You move through these stages of your night like a reader turning the final pages of a long book, each location a closed chapter. The sense of life returning is subtle, but undeniable. It starts not with sight, but with sound. A cough behind a shut door. The clatter of a wooden bucket being set down in a courtyard. The distant, rhythmic thwack of a firestarter's steel on flint, trying to coax a morning flame. These are the small, hesitant probes of a city testing the idea of day. There are no colors yet, only sounds and shades of gray. The eye still holds the night's chill, but it is a stale chill, losing its battle against the inevitable. You arrive at the watch house as the sky in the east pales to the color of a mussel shell. The orange bruise of the night market is gone, replaced by this clean, cool light. You push open the heavy door. The inside smells the same, oil, wool, tea, but the energy is different. The night sergeant is still at his desk, but is packing his clay tablets into a wooden box. Another man, the day sergeant, is sipping tea from a bowl, his tunic crisp, his face still puffy with sleep. They both look at you as you enter. You are the last piece of the night being put away. You walk to the counter. Without a word, you take the iron token from your pouch. It feels different now, lighter, just a piece of cold metal. You place it on the scarred wood with a final, solid clink. The night sergeant picks it up, examines the number, and gives a slow, approving nod. He drops it into a locked iron box with others of its kind. The sound is a full stop. Your authority, your burden, your identity for the past 6 hours, is relinquished. Quiet. The day sergeant asks, not really needing an answer. Quiet enough, you reply, your voice rough from disuse. The night sergeant slides a wooden tally across the counter to you, proof of a completed shift, redeemable for your meager pay. You take it. The transaction is complete. You are no longer the knight. You are a tired man with an itchy tunic and an ache in your shoulders that will linger all day. You step back outside. The world has changed while you were indoors for a minute. The mussel shell gray is now streaked with faint lavender and the palest gold. Shapes have depth and texture. You can see the grain of the wood in the watchhouse door, the individual stones in the street. A lantern is being extinguished in a second-story window. A vendor with a pole across his shoulders, bearing 2 baskets of fresh greens, gives you a wide berth, seeing the black tunic but sensing your shift is done. You are a ghost of the receding night. You begin the short walk to your own rented room, a place you haven't thought of for hours. As you walk, the city slowly ignites around you. Not with a bang, but with a gentle, persistent kindling. A shutter opens here. A gate swings there. The first true smoke of cooking fires begins to curl into the brightening air, carrying the smell of millet porridge. The calls of legitimate, on-time roosters ring out from all directions, a chorus that now feels correct, proper. The night's strange magic, the secrecy, the isolation, the amplified sounds and smells, is dissolving in the plain light of common day. Your slow walk is over. You fade into the waking stream of early risers, just another figure in the dawn, carrying nothing more remarkable than fatigue and the private memory of darkness. The night you held so close, with all its whispered confidences and shadowed dramas, has now slipped through your fingers like cool water. The heavy silence has been returned to the world, packed away with the iron tokens until the next sunset calls it forth. The city that was yours alone, a landscape of intimate corners and solitary footsteps, now belongs to the clamor of millions, to the sun and the market and the great, busy hum of dynasty. You can let it go. The watch has been kept. The peace, that fragile, complicated tapestry of overlooked crimes and small mercies, of mechanical wonders and animal confusion, remains, not unbroken, but mended, ready to bear the weight of another day. So let the images fade now. Let the remembered scents of soy sauce and sandalwood, of river mud and medicinal bark, drift away on the tide of your own gentle breath. You have walked the length of the dark and returned. There is no more to see, no more steps to take. The story is told, the city dreams on, and you can rest now. Just listen to the quiet of your own room, the distant, muffled sounds of a world waking up without you, and know that your part is done. Let the darkness behind your eyelids be soft, and deep, and untroubled. Sleep.